Now post-traumatic growth, which is sort of the new term we're coming up with, to say take those experiences that are causing you that kind of stress and learn how to grow from them. And I think that's what I'm trying to do in my everyday life, and get a discussion about it so that you don't, every time you hear about PTSD, you don't hear about somebody, doing a mass killing somewhere. And I shudder every time I hear about it for a lot of reasons, but one reason I'm just saying, I hope it's not another veteran, because we get sort of a bad rap with that, a veteran with PTSD owning a gun. When in actuality, most veterans turn the gun on themselves. They don't go and kill people, but every once in a while they do, and of course it's sad when it happens in any case, but it's really sad to me when a veteran does that. But most of the time, though, it's they're turning the gun on themselves. But I now live with, not only post-traumatic growth, but also traumatic brain injury from some airplane crashes that happened. But I think a dialogue about it is what really helps, and I encourage you folks to, those of you who are veterans, to try to talk about it, get to know your local VA. Pam is here, she can talk to you about, she's retired from the Air Force and now working for the VA. So, with that, I'll open it up to a few questions. I have some other things if people want to talk about it, I'm happy to do, about waterboarding or something like that. I testified at Congress about when we were trying to decide if waterboarding was torture or not. So,
complete the sentence, sir.
Right.
You got our attention.
Well, I offered a demonstration to the congressional representatives were there, that if they wanted to try to decide if it was torture or not. It is torture. Whether or not you get effective intelligence is a real question you should ask. So, do you really get? We train and I was trained in SEER school, and the SEER schools are wonderful programs, but we learned how to beat that. I was pulled out of the training at one point and said, "Sir, you'd be dead in a real life situation. You're too hard-headed." So, but we trained them to give some information, but then the next session to give a different set of information, and thereby we learn how to combat it. We use waterboarding in SEER schools. We do actual waterboarding run by former prisoners of war who've experienced it. And as a result, we do know how there are effective ways to get around it. The question is whether or not that intelligence is actionable or not. I know Dick Cheney was a big fan of it, but by and large, a lot of the military find it quite ineffective as far as getting useful intelligence. But it is torture. If you don't believe me, we'll set up a demonstration for you. So I'll go ahead and open it up to questions, if anybody has any questions.
You said that there's a large number of female veterans taking their own lives. Is there any type of study as far as what they did in the military that might have led them to do this?
Well, I think there have been a few studies. Pam could probably talk to that a little bit more, because she works in the suicide prevention office there in the VA in Salisbury. But I think they have found a fairly large correlation. Does play a role in that. It plays even a bigger role with some men, because a lot of men don't want to talk about being sexually harassed, and especially if that's by a female boss or something. So, but the women, we're coming a long ways. We've made a lot of progress integrating women into the services, and I'm sure some folks like Pam could talk to you about that a little bit more. But I don't know of any studies so far. Like the video says, it's hard to talk to somebody who's already dead. Somebody who's attempted suicide, we can talk to a lot of those folks, and having been very close to that myself, sometimes I can certainly tell you, sort of you lose perspective. And in my case, I'm very fortunate. I have two sons, one who's still active duty, and the other served also in the Coast Guard. Very supportive. I have a supportive family. I have friends like Robert, we've been friends for over half a century. So I'm very fortunate, but a lot of the veterans lose a lot of their friends, a lot of their family. They come back, they're acting very differently, and they become estranged from their families. But a lot of times the people who are doing it do so in isolation.
Can you explain how service dogs are trained to support someone with PTSD and how they support that person?
The VA actually calls service dogs like him, and he's trained for PTSD and traumatic brain injury. They call them mobility dogs, actually, is the official term for the VA. They help the veteran get out, get engaged. If you have dogs, you know you've got to take them out some. I mean, I grew up on a farm where you just let them run around, and now I live, you know, in an apartment and hotels and traveling a lot. You got to go out a few times a day, or you're going to have a big mess where you are. So we call them mobility dogs. But they basically help a lot with disassociation. Any psychologists or mental health people here?
I have a background in psychology. That was what my degree was.
Okay.
So this association would be, instead of associating going out as being a traumatic event, that the child, I say child, I'm sorry, but that puppy would go out to get them out in the community. So then the association of things are going to be bad, everything's going to come down on me, then that gets you more positive interactions in the community, which will then spin you into doing more social things out in the community.
Indeed. Yeah, a lot of people come up and talk to me that would never come up and talk to me otherwise, you know. And but also disassociation. A lot of veterans will you'll be sitting with them, they're just staring off into space, and you're like, where in the world is that person? All of us disassociate. When you watch TV, if you become so engrossed in the TV show that you don't hear what's going on around you, your significant other, your husband or wife may be calling you, and you've totally tuned them out. Well, you're disassociated. You're totally focused on what you're doing, and so you're not doing. And the dogs then come up to you, and they're trained to sort of sense when you're disconnecting from the world and help you bring you back. But they help you connect with the rest of the world. And they've been. I didn't believe in the program to start with, and the psychiatrist I had to talk to me a long time to get me to try, and I'm like, what's a dog going to do for me? You know. But medicine wasn't working, and so I had to try something. So I said, well, we'll give it a try. It takes about a year long to get one. The mental health people have to evaluate you first to see if you're a good candidate for it. You're willing to deal with some of the logistics of it as well. But then in this case, this trainer at the VA, she's certified by the VA to be a trainer. She prefers rescue dogs, and once she interviews you, then she takes you down to a shelter. You get to meet several dogs, and they say you get to pick one out, but I found out he just came up to me and said, no, you take me out of this place. Here we go. And we've been together well over 5 years now. So.
Mark, you mentioned mobility dog. Is it another kind of dog, like your friend from the Army with seizures,
Oh, yeah.
and how the dog was useful?
Yeah, we also have dogs that do many services for blind. A lot of people familiar with service dogs that are blind, but there are also seizure dogs. And a friend of mine that I was traveling through, I do a 2-month cross-country trip every year, and Chris has a seizure dog. He has significant traumatic brain injury and has seizures, and the dog starts barking to let the veteran know to find a place to lay down so that they don't injure themselves when their seizure starts. So. And there's blood pressure dogs that help with blood pressure. They're really expanding. I spent quite a bit of time working to expand that program. But the big thing, of course, now is so many people are getting dogs that a lot of the airlines, as you know, are clamping down on it because people have emotional support dogs that are not service dogs. The VA has a long checklist of what they have to be able to do, and the big part of that is what they call public access. They got to be trained to go out in public. They got to learn to ride elevators. They got to learn to ride escalators. They got to learn to do all those things. So.
In the past, I've worked for large organizations, and one of the things that the more progressive of them do is to offer pre-retirement type programs that help a long service employee think about what comes next when they leave the organization. Does the military do anything at the point that a person is severed from the military to help in that early period of adjustment or prior to that period?
Well, an excellent question. They're doing a lot more than they used to. I was just recently at one of the Navy bases, rather, speaking to some of the folks. There is a transition program that they offer, and the VA goes in and talks to them while they're still on active duty, encouraging them to go ahead and start immediately applying for, so they can use their VA benefits, especially the health benefits. And there is a lot more of that now. There wasn't anything back when I was getting out, but now the program usually runs about a month or so with some time, helping them. Also learning how to be a civilian again, because they take you, they brainwash you into the military culture. And like when I visited my son in Pearl Harbor over the holidays, you live on the base, you do everything on the base, and it's hard to sometimes associate. And I know, no disrespect, but it's like, I have to learn things. Okay, not everybody understands what 1500 is. 3 p.m. Of course. You have to learn to say things in a way that people understand it. And the military, like a lot of the government, use a lot of acronyms and how to be using that. So, but yeah, there is a lot more of that going on.